Hola, seja bem-vindo, which means welcome. This is Netcode-Hub channel. So you're welcome once again to this channel. This channel facilitates a lot of .NET projects, including lessons and projects for Blazor, WebAssembly, and a Blazor server, and also .NET MARI applications, which comprise of desktop and mobile app, iOS and Android, Windows and Mac OS. So this video is going to be an interesting one as well. We have started this project with the first video, that's almost 2 hours video. And we spoke about, or we learned how to create a custom authentication for Blazor WebAssembly project. You know, security is very important as far as web applications are concerned. So when you create your application, definitely you must have a mechanism to protect unauthorized access. You want to grant people the access to access or have control in your application. You don't want anybody else to do that unless you grant a person access. So to do that, you have to implement an authentication to your application to protect it. We've seen in the first video how to do that by encrypting the password using some algorithms, and also using sorts and converting to base64 string. And as we've seen for the login too, you have to reconvert it from that encrypted version to from base64 string as well, using the same sort. So we've done that in the first video, and let me try to run this application for us to see what we did, to just make a simple recap for that video. So we were able to create our API, and that is the name, very long, but don't worry. Here you can see we have users and register users. So here we're going to register user, and then we're going to log in. As soon as user logs in, we have access to the token. Now, let's say we created a user already in the first project, but in here we can decide to create another one. So that is a name, email, and password. These are the things that we need to provide for this registration. Now after registration, we have to then log in. So let's try this out. We don't need ID, so we can just clear off this ID. So we need the name. Now let's use John Doe. And you have to have an email. So at gmail.com. Now the password I'm going to provide is going to be John123. That is a password. So if I click on execute, this should create the account for us. So you can see from here, successfully created. Now let's log in. So with this, when we go to our database, the password here has been encrypted. Let's check that one out. So when you go to SQL Server Object, and let's wait for this to pop up so we can have access to the database. And let me open this. Database, user database, tables. So I click on this user and I'm going to view the data here. So we use John Doe, and that's the last one. So you can see the password has now been encrypted. And now the encrypted tool that we use, when we check our controller here, so this is a controller, and I want to check this repository, user repository, when you decide to now log in. So this is the login user async, and now this is register user async. So when the user tries to register, this is what happens. We call this method password hash. We're going to hash the password, and now this is the password hash method that we do. So if you check here, you can see we create a byte, we generate random numbers, and now we convert this by using the password, the real password, with the sort that we created as a byte here. And also you want to have an iteration, the number of rounds you go to generate the byte for us, 1,000 times. And now the algorithm name that we're using is an SHA1. So we do that, and now we convert the byte to base64 string. So that's the password. And that's exactly what you are seeing here. So that is it. Now, when user tries to log in, we have to now convert this password from base64 string and also to the hash. And we can now take up the sort and I will convert it and see if they match with this. And that is exactly what we also do here when user tries to log in. So we generate the token. That is not this one. So this is a user login. So if I open this one, you can see from here that we make a check here to verify user password. We convert the password. We get a password from database. We convert it into base64 from the base64 string. We create our sort. And now here, we're going to copy the sort from the string password. Also, the rest that we have, we're going to encrypt the current raw password. Then we compare and see if they are the same. So let's see if they're the same, then we want to return the token. If they're the same, then we call this method to generate the token. We create a symmetric key, and also we add our claims, user ID, names, and email for now. And now we generate our token using this token generated handler. Then we write our token. Okay, so let's see from that, if we check our response here, we have this email, now this password. So I'm going to copy this. And now let's go to the login. So this is a login. If I click on this and I try this out, so let's paste this logins here. Now let's execute this. And I can see from here that our token has now been generated. Now the name that we use, we can just copy this token here and I'll try to find this token if they correspond. It corresponds with what we use for the registration. So we go to JWT.io to now, then we're going to paste this token over there to have access to the features of this token. So JWT.io, let's paste it here, JWT.io. Now with this, we are now going to paste the token that we copied. So when I come here, let's paste the token here. So paste that. And as soon as I paste, you can see we have the user ID, that is 001 over here. We have full name, and that's John Doe. We have email, the expiry date, and then the issuer, the API, and now the audience here, it is a Blazor WebAssembly project that we created. Now we see we have the header because it is divided into 3 sections: the header, the payload, and now the signature. The header is an SH256, and the type is JWT because when we check, that's the algorithm that we use. When we check this, you can see we are using this HMAC SH8256, and that's the algorithm that we are using here to secure or to encrypt this password. And at the type here, it is what? JWT. That's JWT authentication. Okay, the next thing that we do, you can see from this here, you can see we have the signature, and it is, I can see from here, the algorithm that we use, and also we convert it to base64 string, and that's the base64 URL encoded, and etc. So these are the signatures, and I can see we have this as a payload, and this is the actual data that we are focusing on. Okay, so we have that, and that's going to be found within the middle one here. Okay, so you can see that with this, our token has now been generated. And now as soon as we try to log in, so let's try to log in into our application here. So with our Blazor WebAssembly, we're going to pass in John Doe. So let's see from here. So John Doe, so at gmail.com. The password here is John Doe at 123. Now let's see if the password is the same that we use, John. So now let's click on login. And if I click on login, let's wait for this authentication to be done. And this is going to be hidden, and we must see John Doe at gmail.com on top here for our login success. So let's click on it. Yeah, so you can see from here we have our John Doe at gmail.com, and I can see we have the registration, the login, they are hidden, they are gone. Now we have access to all the stuffs in here, as you can see from this. Now the next thing that we do here is we want to talk about some important aspects in also Blazor WebAssembly authentication system. That is protecting your endpoint, protecting your APIs from unauthorized access. And that is what we're going to have a look today. So you know what, the first video that I did, I have the documentation, I have the project and the GitHub. So I will leave, check the description over here. I will leave that video link over here. Now when you click on that video, click the description, you're going to have a link to the GitHub. You can now clone the source code from the GitHub as well. Now with this too, when I'm done, I'm going to also add it to the GitHub. And you can also clone only this project, which comprises of the first one and add this one as well. Okay. So with different episodes that I do, you can have a complete cloned source code from the GitHub. check the description. And also please subscribe to this channel, and also click on the thumbs up or the like button so that this video gets to a lot of people to watch, to improve this channel as well. All right, so thank you so much for doing that. Now I believe you've done that already. Good job. Okay, so let's see what you're going to do next from here. So you can see that from our API here, everyone can invoke this API, can call this API. We have user registration and login. Aside from that, we have another API, and that is known as the weather forecast. So you can see that from here, I have an account, I've registered. If I go to this fetch data, it is going to load the data here for me. Now, I want us to get, we've changed this fetch data. Let's check the controller to see. So let's go back to our source, and now let's go to Solution Explorer, and in our client section, so API, this is our client. We have, let's see, pages. Like, so we have this fetch data here. So with this fetch data, we want to now, instead of calling this, we want to now call a method, an API. So there's an API. So let's copy this API name, and that is a get weather forecast. So this method here is an get. So the API here, it is weather forecast. So you can copy this API. And now let's go to Solution Explorer. And now where we have this fetch data, let's call this endpoint. Instead of using the JSON here, let's call an endpoint. And now we say you should get this. Let's save this. And now let's see. So let's refresh this. Okay, so you can see as soon as we log in or we run the application, we are logged in already. Because when you check this, right click, go to inspect. When you check our local storage, we have saved the token over there. So as soon as the page loads and that the token is found, it has to send it to the API, decrypt it, and I'll check if we have the same data there. If the token is an authentic, then we access the person, we log the person in. So if I go to application and I go to local storage, you can see we have the JWT token here, and that is the token over here. So that's why as soon as we land the application, we are in already, as you can see from here. Now let's go to the fetch data. You can see we have access to that. So let's also go back again. And now this token that we have, we are going to clear this token, meaning that we are unauthorized user. And as soon as we do this, so let's delete that. And now when I come here and I refresh this, let's see. You can see from here, it is off because I'm going to see register and login because I'm an anonymous user. But you can see we still have access to this API. So how can you protect this endpoint? You can do that in so many ways. Let's have a look. Let's go back to our Solution Explorer. Now let's go to our API and the API project. And the controller, you can see we have weather forecast controller. So one, we can decide to specify or be specific. If you want to protect only this action method, we can just put an authorized attribute here. If you want to protect the whole API, we can put it over here. So let's protect the whole API, and I will say authorize here. So it means before you have access to this, you must authorize before you can have access to this API. Now let's see. So let's refresh this application again. And let's try to have access to the API and see if you're going to have access to that fetch data or the weather forecast controller in the application. So you can see fetch data is loading, and as soon as you check down here, you can see we have an unhandled error has occurred. If you right click on this and go to inspect element, let's check for network tab. And now let's try to refresh this again. Now let's see. So you can see from here, it is making a weather forecast call, but the status is 500. It means something couldn't go well. So if you check this, the response, we are having no authentication scheme was specified. So it means you can't have access to this because you specify the controller as an attribute of what? Authorized. But this is not enough. What you want to do here is to protect a controller from an authorized user. We have to add a token header to this. So as soon as you click on this button, when calling an API, the call has to go with an API or that's a token header. And that header is going to be checked if it corresponds to that current user. If so, then it responds with a data to the client. That is what you want to do now. So to do that, we have to install one package. And the name of that package here, it is Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Authentication.JWT Bearer. So let's go to that. We're going to have to install this. So I'm going to close this. We have to install this on the API project. So right click on the API dependencies folder. Now let's go to manage NuGet packages. And now we're going to install this package over here. So we're going to search it here. So in here, let's type in Microsoft.Authentication, Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Authentication.JWT Bearer. Alright, so you can see we have the package name here. So let's install this to the project. The current version is 7.0.10. So we install this. So after this successfully installed, we have to now configure this JWT Bearer service in the program.cs file. So let's do that in. We close this. And now we have to navigate to program.cs file in our API project. So before we proceed, one thing is, whether you followed the first video or not, this process, it is a way of protecting your API. So if you have any other API that you want to protect it, then you can use the same steps as we are following here to protect it, to protect all your endpoint. So yeah, you can use that. Okay, so that necessarily means that you have to first watch the video before you can continue with this. But if you want to do exactly what you've done, then I suggest you watch the first video so we can follow up to where we are now. And it's going to help you get better understanding while we try to get from scratch up to where we are. So let's do that in the program.cs file. So before we have this app.build version method here, we want to specify it beneath. So in here, the first thing that we have to do is let's create a space. So we expand the space here. Now, aside from that, we use builder.services. Then we can have access to .add authentication. And now with this, we're going to pass in this JWT Bearer default. And now it has access to this authentication scheme. Now, as soon as you do that, you see that when you check here, we are going to add this namespace. Okay, so aside from doing this, then we want to add this JWT Bearer. And now this needs some options that we need to pass in as a parameter. So the first option that we need to do here is we have to create a token settings. Now, this token settings that we are doing here is what we did in the, when we check our models. You can see that you created a token or a model to handle the security key and also the validator or the issuer, the audience, and the secret key. So we do that by getting it over here. So we want to create a variable to store it over here. When we check our appsetting.json, we specify it in there. So where's the app settings? You can see in here, we specify it over here, and the name that we gave was token settings. We also created a model inside the models folder, and that's also known as token settings to handle that. So you want to now compare this, or you want to assign this method here, this properties, to the one that we have in the tokens here. So we can have access to security key is going to match security key, issuer to issuer, and our audience to audience. So wherever that we want to use this audience or this model here, we can have access to the data inside these settings. And that's exactly what we are doing there. So we want to create a variable to handle that. And now this is going to use builder.configuration. So as soon as you hear configuration, it means you are referring to the app settings file. And now you can see get sessions. And now the name of the session here, it is called token settings. and that's how we specify it in here. After getting the sessions, we want to get it to this token settings. So this is a model. So it means we are assigning this, we are syncing this sessions here to the model. Okay, aside from that, then we need to specify these options. Token validation parameters, we create a new instance of this. And now the next thing to do is we have to specify this validate issuer, because you can see when you check here, we have issuer suggested or specified, audience also specified. So we want to validate them. So we do that by setting this to this token settings.issuer. We do same thing to the audience, and also we grab the audience. We do same thing to the signing key. And now here we want to grab the secret key, but that is the secret key here in the app settings. And now this secret key, we have to convert it into a string. So that's what we are doing. So we use this method to convert it. That is a symmetric security key. We want to get it over here, and that's what we are getting this. So it is the key, and now we want to convert it and now grab it. Aside from that, you need to add this clock skew span as from 0. Defaultly, we're going to add 5 minutes. And now when you check our repo, you will see that the time span, we are adding 20 seconds. So it means 20 seconds plus 5 is going to be 25. And that's what we're going to use for our token for expiration. So we want our token to expire within 20 seconds. And now we did this for production for this practical purpose. But for production, you don't want to set your token expiry date to just 20 seconds. If not, I just have to log in today. Within some 20 seconds, the token will be expired and I have to do it again. So we don't have to do that. But this for practical purpose, so that's why we set this to 20 seconds. Okay, so after specifying everything here, we can now save this and we can now rebuild this and see. So with this, as soon as I added, there's a namespace added. Tokens also has to add it identity model.tokens and the system.test. That is when we are using this UTF-8 encoding.UTF-8. Okay, so now let's run this again and see. So I'm going to run this application again, and now let's try to access it. The same controller. Now the first one was no authentication scheme was specified, but currently let's run it and now let's see if we're going to have the same thing or there's going to be a change in there. So click on this. So we have our two projects loaded. The first one is an API, and we have our client Blazor 2. That's our UI. Let's test our API first. So at first, we used to have no authentication scheme was provided. Now let's see. So if I click on this get weather forecast, and if I try to click on try this out, execute, you can see we are having here as 401, and mean it is not authorized. So that is the meaning of this 401, not authorized. Now let's try this in this here. And now let's try to get fetch data. And now let's see. So if I go to inspect element, and I go to network, click on this again to make the API call. And now with this, let's have the response here. So header. We have 401. Okay, so maybe we are not authorized. And now you can see when you go to preview, there's nothing there. Response to, there's no response because it wasn't authorized. Okay, now we have this. You know, when you have your controller for registration and also login, you can see from here that you like to also protect it. Because when you check the controller, it may be that it won't be only the first or the same controller, or that controller not going to be used to have authentication for only users. When we go to Solution Explorer, and if you check this user controller, you can see currently we have only two methods here, that is login and register. But it might be that you may want to add another method in here. So in such case, what I'm going to do, let's see, if I decide to specify here as also an authorized attribute. So if I put authorized here, and now with this authorized, let's go to weather forecast controller. we have this method here. Let's copy this method. And now with this method, let's go to the user controller and let's paste this method here. So with this, we want to have access to weather forecast, and you want to have access to this summarize method. Let's see if we need to inject here. Now, when we check this controller, you can see that you have this method in it. That is a static method. So let's grab this too. And now let's go to this and now paste it on top. So we have this static method pasted on top, and now the issue is solved now. So we are getting a list of this, and now it is get. Let's specify the route. So we say this HTTP get. It is get. And now we are saying that this is user slash weather forecast. Okay. Now with this, let's save this. And now let's check, let's run this, and now let's test this in a user API. And now you can see we have here as authorized. So you can see that we have our user over here, and this method, if I click on this, try this out, and I execute this, we still have 401 because the controller there has been authorized. So it means before a user can have access to this, the user has to be authorized first, or must provide a JWT token. Let's see this. If I decide to log in too, let's see. So let's click on this, execute this, and I can see I still have the same thing. I'm trying to log in, and I'm still refused because I need to provide a token for that. You see, this doesn't make sense because you have to log in to get the token, and if I try to log in, problems. Now let's see for the registration. So if I decide to this register, let's log in and see. So with this login to the same issue. So this means that we want to specify, or you want to create a delegate handler. Now this is what the handler is going to do. It's going to check if the API or if the endpoint that you are calling is a login or register. Then we're going to give access to it. We're going to bypass the method of asking for a JWT token. But if it is not, then all requests going to be made has to go in with a token, except register and login. So we're going to have the attribute specified on top as an authorized for this user. After doing that, if a user tries to log in or to register, token won't be requested. But as soon as the user tries to get this weather forecast from this user controller, token has to be requested. Let's try that and see. So what are the first things that we need to do? Here we have post as login. That is, so here we are logging in, and now here we're registering. So let's also specify this here as register. So we have register and we have login. And when you check this, our controller, we have them over here, register and our login. Okay. So let's go to our project, and now in our API, you see we have this repositories here. So let's create one folder here, and let's name it as handlers. So I click on API, let's add a new folder. And now we say this is handlers. So with this handlers, let's create a custom handler. And now this custom handler is going to be custom HTTP handler. So we say this is custom. So custom HTTP handler. Now with this handler, this is going to inherit from a delegate handler. So let's delegate. So delegate handler. Okay, so let's see. All right, so delegating handler. And now with this, we have to create a method here. Now, this is what we are going to do first in this handler. This handler has inbuilt method, and that is a send async because it's an HTTP, so you need to send. So let's have a look at that. We can just type in override, and now this override, you see we have this send async method, so we can now put in that. After putting in that, let's inject our local storage session. That's the local storage service. And now let's check if the system, if the local browser local storage has token. Then we're going to implement that. But if it doesn't have, and if only the request being sent, has an attribute or a route of login and register, they want to bypass the act of requesting token when sending. So let's do that in here. So this has to be done. Now we did this in the API. No, that is wrong. It has to be done in the client section. So now let's delete this, and now we can do that again. So that is for our API. So that's the client. Let's do that in the client. So we add a new folder here as handlers. So handlers, and now we have to add a custom HTTP handler as a class. So we give it a name as custom HTTP handler. And now this has inherited from delegating handler. So we can now generate a constructor for this. So CTOR. And let's also have override this method. That is a send async method. So this send async method is what we're going to do. We're going to have access to local storage. So we're going to check if the request is the endpoint calling. If it is not login or register, then we want to append or we want to request a token. But if it is for only login or register, then go without token. You want to bypass that method. So let's inject our iLocal storage service here. So iLocal storage service, and we can have a look at this control period. And now let's create an assigned field. So we have this. So let's specify our token here. And now first of all, what you're doing here, we're going to use an if statement to check. Now we are saying if this request coming in dot request URI dot absolute path, and now we are converting this to lowercase, so dot contains login. So it means that if the path here contains login, if the URI going in there from our endpoint contains login. Or we can say if it contains the same thing, if it contains register. When we check our user control, like you see, we have register and login. So now we are checking if the URI sending it contains register or login. Then what you want to do, you want to just return this send async. Okay, so it means we are bypassing. But if it doesn't contain login and it contains maybe that is another one is user WF, then we want to get the token from the person's browser local storage. Now, after getting it, we're going to check if it is not null. Then we want to add a header to the request. That's the HTTP request sent. Add a header. The type here, the name is an authorization. Now, this is the value. So, I want to add this token. That's a bearer token. So, at the end, you want to push it over here by calling return await.base or send async. We pass in this request, which has been edited and added header to it. And also we want to add this cancellation token. So this is all that we need to do. So we save this. Now after doing this, we have to register this delegate handler in the program.cs file. So let's go to the client section, program.cs file. And now let's register this handler in here. So you can do that by adding builder.services.add a scope. Then we pass in this custom HTTP handler that we created. And that is this one. So custom HTTP handler. We do this to register this delegate handler here. So we can now save this. So since now we're going to have two routing process. That's an HTTP routing by checking up if the user or if the routing to the URI contains login or register, and if it doesn't. You can see we're having two routings here. So in doing so, we have to use this HTTP factory, and that's from this extension Microsoft.extensions.http. So we have to also install that package, and then we have to configure that too as well. So let's add that by going to Solution Explorer. In the client section, right click on dependencies. Let's add this NuGet package here. So we type in extensions.http, and it is from Microsoft. So let's wait for the search to be done. Then we can install this package. And that is it, Microsoft.extensions.http. Now you see this HTTP client factory is a pattern for configuring and retrieving named HTTP client in a composable way. So we want to use the HTTP client factory. Let's install to our project. So after successful installation, we have to configure this in the program.cs file. So where we have our client section here, we have to specify this in here. So you can see when you check this, you can see we have the first one, that's an add scope, and we're going to create a new instance of this HTTP client from the factory one. So we have to disable this. So let's do that. So we can now just comment this. Okay, then down here, we can initialize a new one. So in here, what we have to do is we have to create a beta.services.add HTTP client. Now this, we specify it any name at all for this, the client factory that we have created. And now we pass in options, and now we get the base address. So we can copy this URI here to this. And I know this address here, it is from the API. So this is an API port. And aside from that, the custom HTTP client that we created, or the method, the delegate handler that we created, we can add it by using add HTTP message handler. We specify our model or our delegate handler in here, and that is all. So now let's save this. So after doing this, it means that all the pages or all our models that we use, or our repos or services that we use, this single HTTP client, we have to go in there and specify the factory and create instance of that factory by specifying the name that we did or we made over here into that. So let's see, we did that for the login, the registration, and also the fetch data. Let's try that and see. So when we go back to our Solution Explorer, you can see that from our project, we created a service here, and now there's a service. So if I go to user service, we injected this HTTP client here, and now we don't want to do that. You're going to use the client factory. So now in here, we can now create an object out of this HTTP client factory. We specify the name and we assign the client to this. So we can do that by creating HTTP client factory.create client, we pass in our name. So this is the name that we specified in the program.cs file over here. And that's exactly what we are doing inside this user service. We do the same thing to this. We can make a copy of this and I paste it over here, and our problem solved. Let's go back to the fetch data and also specify the same thing over there. So in here too, let's comment this HTTP client, and now let's inject the HTTP client factory. So we inject the interface and we create an object. Now let's go down here and now let's implement that. So here too, we can now paste in that HTTP client factory.create async, we pass in our API. Okay, so for now, let's save this and let's test application. So I'm going to refresh this and let's wait to see. So in here, you can see we are logged in already because token is found. So let's go to inspect element and now let's clear that token out. So we go to this and applications, and now this token, right click. Now let's delete that. Let's refresh the application again, and we are now logged out. So you're gonna have the register and also the login buttons on top. So that is what we have now. Now let's see what. Let's go back to this network section, and now here let's click on this fetch data. So if I click on this fetch data, you can see we have a response here. Click on this we have 401, meaning we are not authorized. When you check the response from the server, it is demanding an authentication, the type as bearer. This a request. So when sending, we are not providing any bearer, any authentication token. Okay, so that's why we have this error. Let's see if I click on login. Let's see. So let's log in here, and I'm going to log in with this. Let's add test at 1, 2, 3. Now let's click on login. So before we do that, let's refresh this. So let's switch to network tab. We can clear everything from here. And now let's try to log in. So test at Gmail, then test 1, 2, 3. So if I click on login, see what's going to happen. There's going to be a call. But here we're not going to specify any bearer. So click on this. Next we have login. So if I click on this login, there is a response from the server. Now this response, it's coming in with 4 responses. You can see it's coming with only the server, that's the Kestrel. And now here, you can see there is no server or there is no authentication token requested here, because we did that in the custom HTTP. So we said that if the URI contains login, do not add authorization header. If I click on fetch data, let's see what happens. Now with this fetch data, there is a route. You can see here it needs a bearer. WWT authentication here needs what? A bearer token. But you see here we have an error. Although authorization here we have the bearer token specified, but you see from here it is saying that the token expired at 8/25/2023, 10/38/46. Okay, so here the authorization here it has expired, although we have the bearer token added, but it is expired because when you check the time here, you see it is 39. It is expired. So let's do it quick. Let's go to the applications here. Let's clear this very fast. And now let's refresh this. So we are going to log in fast to see. And I'm going to find the data in the controller. So let's see. Now fetch this off. Now this is what we're going to do. Let's click home. Refresh this. So while we navigate to the network tab, okay, so we click on this fetch data. Now we see we are not allowing us to access it because it needs the bearer token. If you're not providing, let's log in and see. So when you log in and refresh this, now it's going to add a header, the token to the header. So let's log in. And now that is test. So now let's click on login. Okay, so now it is login. If I click on this fetch data, you can see now we have the data here. Now click on this model. You can see this call has the bearer token. Let's expand this. So you can see we are making a call here. And now this is a server. So when you check the first one, you have the bearer token here. You will see it has been added to the header. And now we have the data here. Okay, so that is it. Now you can see we'll be able to access it by sending our authorization token to this. But the next thing I want to do here, I want to talk about is when we click on this login, let's try to log into this application again. Or let's refresh. We've logged in already, so let's refresh it. So you can see that here we've logged in, but we still have this login button here, login page. If I go to register, let's see, so register, and I can still have access to the registration form. So you want to hide these two forms from the user as soon as the user logs in. So this is register registration. So let's registration. So we want to hide these two forms from the user as soon as the user logs in. So let's see. So you can see we have the two form, although we are logged in, but we still have access to this. So we can do that by going to the source code and I'll do some small changes over there to help us rectify or solve this problem. Let's do that. Then we bring the video to an end. Before we do that, let's solve this. You can see we want to handle this error. That's a reload error. You can see here, it means we are not authorized, but I don't want to see this error popping up down there. We want to see maybe not authorized. So in doing that, we go back to our Solution Explorer. Now from the client section, because we have this app.razor. So instead of this route view, we can decide to add authorize route view. So authorize route view. Okay. So if this is too long, we can just cut this. And here, control period, we can add this to the namespace. Now let's save this and let's see. Let's try to refresh this or build the application again. So reload application. So if I click on fetch data, instead of getting me problems or getting me the error beneath, now you can see we have not authorized. Yeah, so that is a simple way of doing it by using this authorized route view here and problem solved. So let's say with the one that issue that we need to also have a look at. So let's go to the home, that's the login page. And now down here, we want to specify this. Let's add the cascading parameter here. So let's inject that. So let's add cascading parameter. And now down here, let's have this public task. Then you can have access to this authenticated authentication state. So authentication state. So let's inject that. And now here we can put in here as auth state. Okay. Then we need to have get and set access set. So when the page load, we can now call a page load method beneath here like this. So let's have override, then on initialize async. So we have on initialize. Now with this on initialize, we have specify it here like this. So here we can say that you can have a look at it. You can store the user here as an authstate.user. So the user can be found in the authentication state, and that is it. So we are grabbing the user from here. Now we are saying that if user identity is authenticated, then you want to navigate to this page. That's the home page. Else you want to perform the normal operation that you want to do. So with this, when we save it and try to navigate to the login page, whilst you are logging, you're going to direct to the home page. Let's save that and see. So let's refresh this. So here, let's log in. Now we click on this login and now let's pass in our normal data. So test at 1, 2, 3. Then I'm going to log in. So after logging in, it's going to send me to the home page. So let's wait. Okay, so I am here now. Now, if I decide to click on login again, let's see. So I'm clicking on this button. So if I click on login, I am here. Okay, so now we have login now. Now let's decide to navigate to the login page. So if I go to login, let's click on it and see. So with this, it has to navigate us back to the home page. You can see we are seeing the home page. Now let's go to the registration. With registration, we're going to have access to because we haven't configured that. So let's configure that too. Okay, so you can see we are here. So let's go in there. We can just grab this code. And now we go to the registration. And now we paste it over there. So down here, let's paste it here. Okay. So this is still going to work as soon as you decide to load that. Let's access the registration to and see. So registration. And now let's wait for this to see if it's going to also navigate us to the home page. Okay, so you can see we have been navigated back here. I want us to create in the shared here, let's create one component. So add a component and let's name this component as redirect authenticated users. So with this here, we are going to just inject. So we don't want to have any of this. Let's inject navigation manager. And now we say navigation manager. Also, let's inject so even this, okay, now let's come here. Let's have this, the page override method, that is the on initialize async. So when this page is initialized, we want to call navigation manager dot navigate to. Then let's pass in this fetch data. So you want to navigate to this place, fetch data. Okay, so even this, you don't need to use this async because you're not calling any method here. You're not awaiting for any task. So we have this task override on initialized. Then we want to navigate to this page. And now here going to be void. So now we have here, anytime this component is called, it's going to navigate the person to fetch data. So let's make sure the fetch data route is what we have specified. So you can just copy this and paste for making sure that's what we've done. Okay, now let's do this in the app.razor because that is the first thing to load when this page is called, when the whole application is called. So where you have this authorized route data, your authorized route view, let's specify that inside the authorized route view. And we can do that by specifying some attribute or some chart component in it. And the chart component is we have not authorized. So if you are not authorized, then you want to check something here. Okay, so we are saying that if you are not authorized, you want to navigate you to the login page. If, then we can have context. Okay, so if context here, and this context dots, you can have access to user dot identity, not identity, then dot is authenticated. So as soon as you pass in this, it means you are not authenticated. Okay, so if you're not authenticated, then what do you want to do? You want to move you to this page, that is a redirect user. So this redirect authenticated users. So we can close this. It's supposed to redirect unauthenticated users. So let's go to redirect page, and now instead of this, you're going to say login. Now save this. So let's refresh this. We have error here. It is because we have to put this in this code. So let's cut this and I'll paste it here. Yes. Save this. Now this we can show this, it doesn't have. Okay. Now let's save this and now let's start it again. So here, let's try to log in and see. So we are in already. And now let's try to access the fetch data. So if I try to access this component, let's see what's going to happen. So if I click on this, you can see that it has navigated me to the login page because I have not registered. So I'll click on counter, you can see I have the same thing. And I have to register before I can have access to the page. Alright, so that is it for this video. Now in this video, we've seen how to protect your endpoint, and that is an API, by adding a custom HTTP handler, so it can add a bearer token into any request that it makes. And also we've seen how to exclude only 2 routes, and that is when it has a login and also register a route, you should escape that and give access to the person. Also, we've seen how to protect your page or navigate your page whenever a user logs in and decides to go to the login or the registration page again. I believe this is helpful. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like what I'm doing, please give me a thumbs up. If you have any issue out too, you can just put it at the comment section there. Subscribe and also share this video. Doing so, you help this video get to other people as well. And it helps the channel too. So I'll leave this code under the description at the GitHub, so check it over there and you're going to see the link over there for cloning, so you can just get the source code from the GitHub. Thank you, take care of yourself, and I believe I'm going to meet you in the other video.